Magic Kingdom has a brand new nighttime parade, Disney Starlight, and today I'm putting every aspect of it to the test. The floats, the music, the runtime. Does Starlight shine bright or fade away? Let's answer the question. Is Disney Starlight an S-tier parade? Hi, I'm James from Guide to WDW, and I was lucky enough to see one of the very first showings of Disney Starlight. But coming up with a video about it has been a challenge. My go-to format for anything new at Disney World is it an upgrade or downgrade? Except Magic Kingdom's last nighttime parade was the Nothing Parade, which ran for 9 years. Okay, so upgrade. Please like and subscribe. See you next week. Where's the suspense in that? Also, I am just a sucker for a nighttime parade, which made it hard to do an honest, unfiltered reaction video because it would just be me going, yeah, I liked it for 10 minutes straight. Please sign up for my Patreon. On one hand, doing critical analysis of a parade kind of feels like doing critical analysis of a surprise party. But on the other hand, some parties are better than others. Enter the tier list. We're gonna have fun with this. If you're not familiar, a tier list is a way of grading and comparing things. Going from F tier, completely terrible, all the way up to S tier, the best of the best. I'm going to rank every aspect of the parade. The floats, the soundtrack, the pacing, the vibes, and every single one of the thousands upon thousands of lights on this tier list. Okay, maybe not that detailed, but at the end I'm going to give a grade to the parade overall. For example, I'd put Paint the Night at Disneyland as an S tier parade. I think it's just perfect. But hot take, Main Street Electrical Parade I'd put at B tier. It has so much history going for it, and the music is just the best, but would I want to stay up all the way until 9 or 11 p.m. for it? Not always. So let's rank Starlight, starting float by float, and then I'll get into more overall category scores and judgments. The parade kicks off with the Blue Fairy, and things are off to a really good start. This float is just stunning. Not only the design, but the scale. It's really hard to convey in video, but she big. The Blue Fairy is an absolute unit, towering over the guests. And then there's a box with Pinocchio and Geppetto inside, which is a really fun surprise, and something about it feels inexplicably retro to me. Seeing them gave me a wave of nostalgia pointing towards something I can't quite put my finger on. This float leading the parade is of course a nod to how the Main Street Electrical Parade began with the Blue Fairy, but it's the best possible type of homage, one that outdoes its predecessor. I gotta give this S tier. But let's come back down to earth with Wish, and one of the most common gripey comments I've seen about Starlight is, why did they even include Wish? First, the parade is called Starlight, and one of the major characters from Wish is a literal star. I think it's as simple as that. And second, yes, Wish did not do well at the box office, to say the least. But if we're only judging things based on initial box office success, Pinocchio shouldn't be in the parade either, because it flopped back in 1940. I think it's smart for Disney to use things like the parks and Disney Plus to build fan affection for properties that didn't do well initially and hopefully will grow over time. So my problem with this float has nothing to do with the property. I like Wish, I think it's fine, but the float itself feels underwhelming, especially compared to that giant Blue Fairy float that leads the parade. The Wish float is small. I think it's the smallest float in the parade, and there's only one human performer. And the adorable star character doesn't really pop from the screen. I'd put this at D tier. Next up, the Family Madrigal in a really good Encanto float. I love the design of this float with the giant candle that animates flowers and butterflies. Plus there's 3 characters, Mirabel, Isabella, and Bruno, plus lively music from the movie. My 18-month-old daughter is currently obsessed with Encanto, so that soundtrack is seared deeply into my brain. I learned a new definition of dadding hard this week by having to sing the entirety of We Don't Talk About Bruno just to get her to fall back asleep at 2 a.m. But even still, I was delighted to hear the Encanto music here. So for the great design, great music, and for my daughter Tallulah, I put this at A tier. Next up is Frozen, and this is one that I feel like weirdly looks better in videos and pictures than it does in person. I like the look and the design, but it's just Elsa and these diamonds. I wish it all felt a bit more dynamic, like her choreography was more in sync with the lights changing, so it feels more magical. There's a little bit of that there, but I wish there was more of a contrast of the lights transforming. I'd rank this one like I'd rank Frozen 2, a bit underwhelming, C tier. Next, our 5th float is the Royal Couples Float, which is a mainstay of Magic Kingdom parades. This one is really well done. My initial ranking had it much lower, just because the float design, while beautiful, is a bit more straightforward than some of the other more inventive floats. But the choreography and the music is so beautiful, and then there's all the royal court dancers flanking the float. All of it is really well done, and I think this is perfectly placed in the middle of the parade. B tier. The sixth float is Coco, and I've heard from many people who said this is their favorite. I love the design of this float. It's intricate, fun, plus there's a giant pepito with steam coming out of its nose. But I do wish there was one more element you could look at as the float goes away from you, like a figure of Dante flying above the city. This float is missing one element like that, and is straddling between B+ and A- territory. I give it the A tier because the design of it is just so good. Next, Moana shows up, and now the parade has kicked into full gear. This float is great. The scale, the waves, Grandma Tala rising up. I think this float needs a little more on the ground to support it. There are dancers ahead of the float, and it could really use more of that. But this is definitely A tier. The second to last major float is Peter Pan. And this float probably has my favorite design with Big Ben and all the buildings. There's Tinkerbell, and her choreography interacts with the float in the way that I wished happened more with the Frozen float. It's just beautiful. Plus, the music gives me goosebumps. But even with all that, I initially ranked this as my least favorite float in the parade, for a very petty reason. It just feels like Peter and Wendy should be flying on this float. It even looks like it was designed to support that, and all of their dialogue is talking about how they're flying above the city. So as this gorgeous float went by, I was sitting there just going like, well, why aren't they flying? What a rip. And I was kind of cranky about it. I had also been up since 3 a.m. Since then, I've gotten some sleep, and I've come to my senses. This is an A-tier float. But add in some pixie dust and make them fly, and it's probably the best float in the parade. But since they didn't do that, that honor goes to the Starlight train. I was just a sucker for this. It's a great finale. The train is bright and beautiful, and when the Main Street Electrical Parade theme hits, it's just a pure dose of joy.
Gosh, Minnie, have you ever seen the stars sparkle like this before?
The new character Whimsy is very charming too. I just loved everything about this float. I guess technically the Starlight logo with Jiminy Cricket waving is its own unit, but I'm going to include it with this train, S tier. Next up is the category rankings. But in the comments, let me know what tiers you would rank the floats, and if you think this video is A tier or above, give it a like and get subscribed to Guide to WDW for more Disney World deep dives. Okay, category rankings, starting with the music. This might be controversial, because I've heard from a lot of people who didn't care for the music or didn't think it was catchy enough. I love the music. The theme has been stuck in my head for weeks. It has a great blend of synth and orchestra, and they use the Main Street Electrical theme in really smart ways. I think people are comparing it to Paint the Night, which has When Can I See You Again by Owl City as the main theme. And that is a genuine earworm that had been around for years when that parade first debuted. I think Starlight's theme is really catchy and iconic, but it doesn't have lyrics and it's brand new, so it'll take some time for people to really grow affection for it. Music is so subjective, so I get why people might disagree, but for me, this is S tier. I've been listening to the soundtrack nonstop. Next, overall float design. One of the most common praises I've seen for Starlight is the float design, and I agree overall. I have one complaint. The floats are a bit too front-loaded. There's not enough happening on the back of the floats to keep your attention. But overall, the designs are gorgeous, inventive, and iconic. A tier. Now, let's get to one of the most common complaints I've seen about Starlight, the ground performers, and specifically not anything to do with the actual performers in the parade, but how the parade uses ground performers. And there's just not enough of them. The World Couples float is the only float that feels like it has enough ground performers with it, with the court dancers. Encanto just has these butterflies that kind of quickly flutter by, Frozen just has these diamonds, and there are not nearly enough characters on the ground, with Tinkerbell being the only one. I think they could add Maui with a glowing hook, kind of like how they had at the Flower and Garden Festival, Luisa from Encanto, Anna and Olaf, the list goes on. It all feels like it's been pared back significantly. I'd put it at the D tier. Needs massive improvement because it significantly affects the next category, pacing/overall length. Now, I've seen some complaints that the parade is too short, but it's about 14 to 15 minutes, which is only 2 to 3 minutes shorter than Paint the Night. So it's not that short, but I will say the pace of the parade feels very swift. Without performers spacing out the floats felt a little bit too much on top of each other. There were a few times where I was just trying to enjoy all the details of the float's design, and then it was like, oh wow, the next float is already here. Getting back to the surprise party metaphor, complaining that the parade is too float heavy is kind of like complaining that the party has too much cake and not enough chips. But hey, this party needs more chips. This is B tier. It's close to being great, but not quite there. Finally, before I give the overall parade ranking, I'm going to rank the vibes, which kind of encapsulates all the things that are hard to describe about the parade. Like how it makes you feel when the lights go down on Main Street and the music first hits. As the kids probably don't say anymore, the vibes are immaculate. It feels magical, dreamy, very in line with my vague memories of how Spectromagic felt. Where Paint the Night feels like a loud, exciting party, this feels like the most pleasant dream. I gotta put this at A tier. So after saying I wasn't going to do critical analysis of a parade, I ended up doing critical analysis of a parade. Oops. But I still haven't answered the question, is Starlight an S tier parade? And I'm not just going to average out everything or judge it only by its weakest or strongest parts. I think this parade definitely has room to improve and room to grow. But it's close. Another minute or two of ground performers and 2 or 3 more characters would go a very long way. But like I said, I'm a sucker for a nighttime parade, and I think Starlight is a great nighttime parade and clears the very high bar of being a worthy successor to the Main Street Electrical Parade or Spectromagic. Yes, I like Paint the Night better, but I think this is a great addition to Disney World and feels very home at Magic Kingdom. So is Starlight an S tier parade? Not quite. Like the Peter Pan float, it needs something a little bit extra to make it really fly. And like the Coco float, it's hovering between B+ and A- for me. But since I love a good nighttime parade, I'm gonna give it some extra credit and put it in the A tier. But let me know what you think, and stay tuned because I have a ton of new videos covering Destination D23, the future of Hollywood Studios, and much more coming very soon. This has been James from Guide to WDW. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon.